Former Marvel Studios director and co-director of Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, Joe Russo talks a little bit about Marvel's future plans and how that there is a plan, but it's not really what you think, and it's not really as big as you might think it is. So this comes at us courtesy of Deadline, who was able to share some additional details that Joe Russo gave to the Sands International Film Festival. And he specifically was asked about Marvel Studios, their direction, and of course, the big plan that Marvel Studios has, which of course, him and his brother Anthony Russo have talked about in the past, how Marvel Studios has a general outline that's always 5 to 10 years out, and they don't dismiss that. But they say, despite the fact that there is a plan, there really isn't a plan as big as you might think. And for example, they talk about Captain America Civil War. They approach that as one project, and they might have an idea of what happens next, but they don't outright commit to it 100% because you never know if it's going to tank, in relation to money or reviews, and you got to be able to pivot. So when you approach the project, you're making a standalone project, but also that big plan does and doesn't need to be considered. So it's sort of a lie, as he says. Yes, there's a big plan, but you got to be ready to pivot at any point. And again, if you go back to when they were talking about making Civil War, they didn't know Spider-Man was going to happen, so they were working on the film without him. Suddenly, Kevin Feige walked in and told them, "We got Spider-Man." They're like, "Perfect. We're going to adjust for it." They wrote Spider-Man into that film, but they didn't have a plan for where Spider-Man is going to be after it. That wasn't part of the master plan because they were never told. So that's kind of what they're saying here. And I honestly appreciate that they're kind of giving us some transparency because it does make sense. And he continues to explain how they also retrofit ideas into the MCU, and they look at what was done before that maybe has some sort of payoff that they could use, and how they could go down in a specific direction, but it doesn't necessarily have to be predetermined. We can get there in a more natural, organic fashion. And this again all kind of goes back to those early days and what Marvel Studios has been saying. You get hired, you make your film. Just hit these specific beats because Kevin knows what's going on. You don't need to in your individual projects. And they kind of reaffirm that, which I do honestly appreciate, because it's like, we know there is a plan, but plans can always change.